Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Alliance Tournament. I'm here with my fellow commentator, Eka, and we have a very interesting Russian civil war here with Vydra Reloaded going up against Out of Sight. Why don't you take a look at that Vydra Reloaded team for us?
So Vydra have gone for what looks like kind of the classic drones here. They've got dual Ishtar, dual Vector Navy, dual Magus, which is quite interesting, bringing drones, and of course links on those command destroyers. And that is supplemented by Mystic Rebel in the EOS, also bringing heavy links, and the Guardian of Nika Noiser there to reps. Out of Sight choosing to bring an underpointed setup here, but with dual Deacons, a classic Russian move. I do like when teams bring the Logi frigates. It just shows really skill if they fly them well. I'm looking forward to see that.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at warp-ins, though. Both one team warping in at a ball at 50, and the other warping in at a ball at 30. Is there anything you think you can extract from that?
I think it looks like Out of Sight they're coming in a little bit closer because they've got those Fleet Hurricanes, the Navy Harbs, the Brutixes. I mean, they want to make sure they can get in range earlier than Vydra, who obviously want to kite away with base setup. They're going to be dropping drones, burning off, and just trying not to get caught. Now, if they're clever, they'll sort of scatter a bit as the targets come in. That will a little bit harder for Nika Noiser to keep up with them, of course, in his Guardian. But if they can get away from the Hurricanes, the Harbies, the Brutixes, all Out of Sight, when one target goes down, Out of Sight have to spend much longer getting back into optimal on the next target.
Yeah, very interesting choice to bring those arbitrators as well. They're probably going to be fitting, I'm going to imagine, tracking disruptors in order to try and deal with the quad BC core that we've seen, and then just try and DPS through it with those obviously 6 battle cruisers that they've decided to bring. And this is going to be a real struggle for Out of Sight, though. Look at how low that attack bar is. Vydra Reloaded are pretty much, they've got about half of their attack bar, but they haven't even launched drones yet. Still, boosts going off and here the fighters.
Those arbitrators are going to be almost useless against that Vydra Relolded team because probably, like you say, looking for turrets. And I mean, Vydra can just ignore them and just focus on trying to get down those battle cruisers. And those drones are going to do an absolute hell on those Deacons there if they get on top of them. So the match is underway, and we're already seeing the Jackdaw of ISIS going down on the Vydra Relolded team. The rep's starting to land, and he is now being okay. Now, on the other side, the arbitrators, strange choice by Vydra, because those arbitrators, unless they're specifically Newt fit or something, they're going to be doing very little to this Vydra team. So it's an odd primary choice there.
I mean, there's a lot of odd choices here, from the choice to bring some armor jackdaws. I think an interesting call there to go for the Deacon. Unless they have tackle, I don't think those drones are going to be able to track it well enough to break its tank. They need to just go for the Harbingers or some form of their DPS core, and it looks like they're trying to do that there. Maybe web drones actually would have been a good choice for the Vydra Relolded team here.
Yeah, I mean, those Deacons are going to be really hard to hit for most turret teams, but like we say, Vydra bringing drones here. The Deacons, although they are tanking, they are struggling a little bit, and they're definitely not keeping up this Navy Harbinger of Calcis, who is dropping into hull now. He's about half hull, quarter hull, he's going to go down, and he is down. So that takes the first kill of the match to Vydra Relolded, taking them up over Out of Sight here. So Vydra have to just consider what they're going to go for next. Out of Sight really have to consider what they're doing.
Yeah, I think Vydra is making a good choice ignoring those arbitrators, because those arbitrators are effectively useless and they're squishy enough that they can kill them later. You know, they are slowly burning down that Deacon, though. I'm not entirely sure how, but they are managing it. This is incredible. I have to imagine that Deacon is getting hit by either light drones or very, very tracking bonus medium drones, which means that Vydra Reloaded has sacrificed a lot of their potential control to fit tracking comps on their drones.
Yeah, it looks like what's happened here is the Deacon of Geltar was taking huge amounts of damage. He was dropping very low, forced Advanat to come in the second Deacon and try and save his buddy. Now that's ended up with him being webbed and scrammed. Now most likely, based on the speed, that's an AB fit Deacon, so he's going to be signature tanking, and it looks like he is getting away. Now the fact that they're webbed means that the Deacons are not going to be able to get very close to those Harbingers. If the Harbingers get too far away from them, the rep range on these Deacons is very low, and that Harbinger not getting very much reps, he is going down and he is dead as well. So that's the second Navy Harbinger down on the Out of Sight team. Vydra Relolded currently sitting pretty. They're basically full armor in every single ship. The Guardian is now taking a little bit of shield damage. This is the first Out of Sight have even bothered to shoot him.
Yeah, these Jackdaws actually doing real work for Vydra Relolded. They look to be at least scram, web, and paint fit. So if they get in between these deacons, as they just did, they can pretty easily push them up. It's working so well for them here.
Yeah, Nika is taking quite a bit of damage in his armor now, but he hasn't actually tackled, and he is going pretty fast, so he should be able to just kite away and get out of damage range, and I'm imagining he'll be okay. Critically, out of sight, they've lost one of those deacons now, so their rep power is cut in half, and if that deacon has to rush in to try and save, for example, this Navy Brutix here, which it looks like he's just done, going to be well within drone quick damage and travel range, so that second deacon probably won't last very long, although that Navy Brutix just taking huge amounts of damage even under what reps the deacon can provide.
Yeah, what I'd really like to see from Vydra to just clean this up is just to put whatever light damage they have, those Jackdaws, those Maguses, put that on the Deacon, let it slowly grind it down, and then put the rest of your damage on the Navy Brutixes, and just remove as much damage as you can from the field at this. They've deliberately not gone for the Fleet Hurricanes, as they know that whilst the Fleet Hurricanes typically fit 2 links, it's not going to impact the sight team too much anymore by taking them out. They're just trying to reduce the incoming damage on their Guardian, try and keep it alive, and make this a flawless victory. And I think that's clever from them.
Nika now into about quarter armor, so he is dropping and into hull, and he is gone, just deleted there. The Fleet Hurricanes got on top of him, and they just removed him. So out of sight, I don't think they have much chance of pulling this one back based on how far behind they are. But without the Guardian on the Vydra Relolded team, there is a chance they could start working through, especially these squishier ships, like maybe the Maguses, the Jackdaws, or this Vector Navy they're choosing to primary right now, remove a huge amount of damage from the field. But saying that, they've just lost their second Deacon, so now it is down to 2 Fleet Hurricanes, 2 arbitrators to go up against the entire Vydra Relolded team minus a Guardian.
Yeah, the real question is, can they take stuff out? You can see the power of the comp in what it's attempting to do here, as they burn through Randolph Skies in the Vector Navy issue incredibly quickly. What this team wanted to do is it wanted to kill these cruisers, but they focused very hard on that Jackdaw for no real reason. I can't understand that call. They needed to be applying this level of damage from the start of the fight onto those squishy cruiser targets, get them off the grid, and then from there move in for the kill.
Yeah, it looks like just maybe, as you say, just primaries could have been a little bit better. I think maybe they were scared of those Jackdaws getting in and tackling those Deacons, and if the Deacons are both webbed and scrammed, then the mobility of that entire comp there is just massively reduced, as they won't be able to kite around, they won't be able to charge in with the battle cruisers, because they leave their Logi behind, which is just a death sentence. So at the end of the day, they tried to do that, and it just didn't really execute very well. Now, Randolph Sykes is living to win, to use a Jintanism, and he is surviving in basically hull at this point, but the damage from the outside team has completely dropped off, so I think they might be able to just clean this up, losing only the Guardian, which would be a very convincing win for Vydra Relolded.
Yeah, very convincing win here. One other interesting thing is, we kind of see something opposite to what we've talked about previously on the desk, with Vydra Relolded bringing something that's unique, bizarre, and then using that as opposed to what people normally do, which is not shoot it, have people shoot it, be prepared to take that. These Jackdaws did very, very well at surviving through what damage out of sight could put out. Do you think this is maybe using this was a deliberate choice on Vydra Relolded's part, as opposed to using something more traditional like a Confessor, simply so that they could confuse them?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a valid thing to say. Armored Jack, not the most obvious choice, of course, but they did seem to tank pretty well. Now the match is over, so we will hand this one quickly back to the guys in the studio for some little post-match analysis.
We've got the Kings of Losec with Project Mayhem.
Guys, welcome back after another great match there. It felt a bit like the Out of Sight team versus Vydra. Out of Sight trying to anti-meta there with the MBCs plus ARBs for tracking disruptors and then deacons. We actually have the instant replay of the first deacon dying here to see how it was caught and how it was killed. If we look here as it goes through, if we can focus in on the deacon there, Mr. Equalizer, thank you very much. It looks like it was not tackled, but it was also not moving. So it's very important when flying frigates that you move. There it goes, speeding up as it gets shot. You've got to be really careful. It's trying to speed up towards the end, but it's far too late. You know, that's kind of a lesson in Logifrig piloting. Like if you watch the Ronin, which we'll be seeing next by Logifigs, they are constantly moving. You've got a very short ret range, so yes, you need to stay close to your friendly ships, but you should be circling them, moving around, constantly keeping up that transversal and speed as best you can. Also, you can see they were not against a Navy battlecruiser team, which they were probably hoping for, or with that kind of RB pick with the tracking computers, instead against the drone team here brought forward. But what confuses me here is the ban stage. If you're trying to force your opponents into a specific comp that you're counting, generally you want to use that by bans to force them in there. However, they did ban the Aneros and the Daredevil, which to me says, I don't want you to bring the Navy battlecruiser comp, but then perhaps it's kind of like a double bluff that didn't quite work. Suetonia, what do you think of this match?
I think the bans are also really weird. I think the Daredevil ban is incredibly weird. I'm not sure why you would ever ban a Daredevil unless you were planning on SIG tanking, or which they obviously weren't. I think it would have been better to ban the Guardian as well as the Aneros if they wanted to bait their opponent, but then again, why would you ban a Aneros if you want them to bring that? If you're bringing a hard counter die, it's kind of weird.
Yeah. Now, Brett, we saw their armor Jackdaws. Jackdaws traditionally, you know, shield chips. If you put in defense mode, it gets that shield bonus. What's so great about armor Jackdaws? Why are we seeing them here?
Well, armor Jackdaws, due to Jackdaws being a shield ship, armor Jackdaws get a huge amount of utility mids. They have that ability in sharpshooter mode to shoot over 100 km with light missiles, and I'm assuming that's what killed the Deacons. I'm assuming it's the drones were killing quite a lot of the larger ships. You saw them take the Navy harbingers down and the Navy battleships, battle cruisers, and these Jackdaws were just plinking away at these Deacons, and these Deacons were sitting 150 km away, just dying in a fire.
So our next match coming up in 9 minutes is going to be the match between the Ronin and Test. As we said just before this match, we're very excited to see this one. I personally am a huge Ronin fanboy. My boy Lilu Killick in his Logifrig there. They're going up against Test. You know, I think a very popular team as well. You know, I'm certainly a fan of Test. Who are you guys' picks? What do you think about these teams?
I think both of them are kind of like the filter for the top tier teams a lot. Test Alliance, always a team that tends to knock out a lot of teams but then dies to a top tier team. The same with the Ronin, really. They are really strong, but they always fall a bit short from the prize ships.
Yeah, I mean, I would differentiate them perhaps a little more. Like, to me, Test are one of those gatekeepers to the top rounds, but they always die to the more established teams. The Ronin, I feel, are almost in that role, but I also call them the kind of like the king killers. Like, the Ronin is a team where I would expect them to be more of a threat to a top team in a way that I don't usually feel Test can be, especially this year with Test. Brett was telling me in the break that Test has lost a fair amount of their old Tawny core, perhaps off to other teams, perhaps to other places, which is why Test has been struggling a little bit more than usual this year. Still, certainly a very good team, very solid team, but not quite the Test we saw a few years ago, who were kind of like busting the meta and really making really impressive deep runs. So as we said, Ronin versus Test. I think all of us here are kind of assuming it's going to be the Ronin, but with Test like a minor odds. Let's see what the audience is saying. Currently it's 60-40 on my screen, though of course I have a little delay from the actual results from what you guys are seeing. Yeah, it's going to be a great match. I'm sure the commentators so far today have been doing a wonderful job. The commentators we have, of course, give them a quick shout out. We got, you know, Elise, we've got Jintan, we've got Moderator coming in over the internet as well, a few others. And then we also have a casting booth out in the corner. So, for example, you guys have heard Relolded casting, and we'll be doing the old switcheroo around as the day goes on. In case you get bored of my face, even we've got Ithaca hosting in the third quarter of today, as we did yesterday. So if we look at the teams that were brought last time by the two teams we're about to see, Ronin and Test, if I just bring them up here we go. So last match, Test brought a TFI core. So it's kind of like a bit of a throwback team there. They brought 2 TFIs and a Neros, a Myrmidon, 2 Vigilance, a Vengeance, a Vexer, and 2 Purifiers. So this is a comp that had actually several names. But it's the old TFI core with Vigilance replacing the Tactical Destroyers, typically the common low end there. The Vigilance are only 2 more points this year, thanks to it being a Serpentis-sponsored tournament. And then the other team we have, the Ronin, brought one of their classic signature Logifrig comps that I really loved. The Ronin brought... That's not the Ronin. Okay, the Ronin brought a comp I really like. So it was Mega Navy in the top end, a ship we rarely see in the tournament. 2 Astartes, 2 Curses, 2 Deacons, a Vexer, a Purifier, and Daredevil. And they had that crazy close match against Team Skill. Do you think that the Ronin team there, Suetonia, was kind of a hard counter to an expected Navy Brutic score? Or do you think it's a more versatile comp that can deal with, for example, the drone meta or perhaps a rapid light comp?
It seems like a kind of an unusual comp to me. I'm not sure why Navy Mega was picked. Maybe the Vindicator was banned in that match, and they just wanted to bring that comp.
Mm-hmm. Brett, what about the comp from Test here? This kind of slightly more different kind of throwback comp with the Vigilance. What are your thoughts on it?
I think the Navy Typhoon Typhoon fleet issues very much a kind of a standard comp. They do well against everything that we've seen so far. They do well against the drones, they do well against the battlecruiser core. They don't do excellent against these. They don't absolutely stomp, but if you're good with, if you know you're better than your opponents and you bring that, you're guaranteed a hard match, but it's easily winnable if you're skilled with it.
Well, we do have a little more graph porn for you guys coming up. Here we have Armor versus various other teams and how it's been doing. So Armor versus various comps. So we've had 25 matches of Armor versus Armor. So naturally that's going to be a 50-50 win ratio. But then Armor versus drone teams, there's no real difference. But if it's Armor versus All-In, Armor has a 100% win ratio versus All-In. That's an interesting stat to look at. Armor against Friglotty is about 50-50. Armor versus command ships has not gone well for the Armor comps looking through here. Armor consistently beats hull comps. It's pretty consistently beating shield comps. We've only got 1 loss of an Armor comp versus a shield comp. Then drone, obviously they tend to be Armor comps, so that's around 50-50. Really interesting to see those stats come up here. Big thanks to Alexi and his team of helpers upstairs against all of this stuff. I do love the names of the comp archetypes there, like Pseudo Tinker, RML, Spam, Fly Killer. We haven't seen any Fly Killers yet. Now, Suetonia, as a member of Hydra, Fly Killer is a comp, synonymous with Hydra. They had that Ad Boom headshot a couple of years ago. Do you think we're going to see much of the Fly Killer, guys, the Fly Killer comp coming out this year? Or do you think that NBC is so hard to volley that RT Slep's not so much of a thing this year?
I think Fly Killer tends to be a counter to control setup, so which we haven't seen too much this year, but I still think Fly Killer can be bought and it is strong.
Mm-hmm. So we've got 4 minutes before the next match coming up here. Brett, what are your thoughts? What are some comps perhaps that we've seen in past years that we haven't seen so far, maybe that you expect to see, or comps that maybe you think they're just kind of invalid even though in their time they were good?
I definitely think, with the new rules, Tinker was banned last year due to the inability to bring cap transfers, and they've reintroduced that for this year. You can bring cap transfers, but you're not allowed T3 logistics. So I'm looking for what we're calling a pseudo Tinker, where you fit like a basilisk with instead of fitting it with a cap booster, you get fed cap from these stuff like the battle cruisers or the battleship core, and then just give it a lot more large reps so it has a lot more repping power. I'm looking forward to seeing those kind of very solid setups that either last the whole match in a brilliant victory or get destroyed when something goes down.
Yeah, I mean, typically you'd want to be feeding large reps in, probably from a battleship there. So maybe if, Rattlesnakes now with their T2 drones, perhaps that might be a good choice. The Navy Scorp as well, a popular choice, great tournament ship here. Maybe those could feed cap. Again, battleships being a bit more expensive, we're seeing much more preference onto the battlecruiser hulls because they are so much cheaper but still project across the arena. They still have quite a lot of EHP, especially the Navy ones. Suetonia, what are your thoughts on bringing battleships versus versus battlecruisers this year? Do you think it's just, battlecruisers are the correct choice this year, or do you think battleships have a place in the meta?
I think battleships have a place in the meta, but I think you have to bring very select battleships. You don't just throw them in. I think we're going to see Vindicators, obviously, because of the point reduction. Battlegun, because it's a flagship. I don't think we'll see that many Tech 2 Battleguns.
Well, let's find out what Ronin versus Test are going to bring in their match, which we're going to bring you right now.